Okay, ladies and gentlemen, now we have the conquest or the attempt to deal with scarcity, and we want to end up creating happiness. And we have measurements of where we can measure happiness and well-being. But now the question comes: how do we actually make a system that actually does that? Because we have to have an understanding. You got to have a system that's actually going to deal with people's wants and needs and deal with the concept of scarcity. And that method used by society to decide how to produce and distribute goods and services is known as an economic system. And these systems got to be complex because everybody that exists within this system is going to be self interested. Everyone's going to have different wants and needs, and every system's going to have different resources at its disposal, different factors of production. So you get a group of people, they have a certain plot of land, and they make some choices with their factors of production. Number one, we have these resources. What do we produce? We know that it's going to satisfy a lot of different wants and needs. Should we make goods or services? How much wants and needs should we satisfy? Do we deal with guns or butter? Number two, how do we produce these goods and services? Or how much and what type of human capital do we use? How much and what type of physical capital do we use? When are we going to do it? Is this going to be a long-term thing, a short-term thing? Are we meeting a basic need, of potential long-term investment? Is the good or service going to be consistent in terms of its um, providing it? Is it intermittent? Is it seasonal? Number four, where do we produce this? Is there a particular location in our region, locale, city, country, world where it would be better to produce this? Would actually be lower cost to outsource? I mean, I could make coffee in Ukiah, but is the cost too high to actually do that? Would it be better if we did it somewhere else? And finally, who's going to actually consume the goods and services we create with these resources? Now, as we have said before, this is a constant idea. We're talking about systems. Who actually makes these choices? Who deals with these questions? On one side, you're going to have the idea that producers and consumers do it. On the other side, it's government. And so, in economic systems, we have a spectrum here. This is kind of the basic AI model, like American institutions model, where you have command economies where the government has more control, and free market economies where the government has less control and buyers and sellers makes more of those choices. Um, you're going to learn a more nuanced and marginal analysis of these things. So, in later videos, you're going to learn about neoliberalism, welfare capitalism, market socialism, and ultimately socialism. Today, we're focused on the idea of laissez faire, consumer producer based economics. These don't really exist in the world except for something like slum cultures, but no country is purely laissez faire, buyer and seller based economics. Slum cultures, you don't have any government intervention at all. Government doesn't think you exist. And so those are really where you can study the benefits and downsides of a purely free market system, a laissez faire based system. So we know that a market is any arrangement that allows buyers and sellers to exchange, whether that be physical or virtual. When we talk about free market economics, we have two sides, buyers and sellers, or actually, it's a little more complex than that. We have households, which are going to be members that are under one roof, and businesses, firms that actually create goods and services. Now, each of these two groups are parts of markets and they have different goals. Okay. A business is an organization that uses resources to produce goods and services. It provides those goods and services, but wants to acquire factors of production. And its ultimate goal is profit. You may have heard the term profit motive, where the motive a business has is to profit, which is the total money after all your costs are paid. Households are person or people that live in the same place. They actually provide those factors of production and want goods and services. And the main goal is ultimately utility, satisfaction, usefulness, and the maximization of that utility. Now, since both of these groups have different competing goals, they engage in market transactions to meet both profit and utility. So, to do this, let's look at this. This is called circular flow. It shows the relationship between businesses and households in a purely free market system. Government will be added in the next set of videos. So, this is a laissez faire style system. So, to start, we have businesses, we have households. The first market they engage in is something known as the factor market. Within the factor market, households are going to engage in a flow of resources towards businesses. That is factors of production. Households own land, labor, capital, entrepreneurial ability. Those come from households in the form of things like interest and rent and those kinds of things. Now, the factors of production go to the businesses because the households, they don't make anything. They provide, and the businesses turn around and they return money back to the households, interest payments, rental payments, and wages. Now, we're not going to get into some of these smaller ones. The main thing I would say is that you look at wages. Okay, so households provide factors of production, primarily labor, and businesses provide back to households wages. This is the factor market, factors of production, the market exchange. So, how does this look? Well, you want a job. You want a job so you can acquire income. So, you go look for a job. That job says, cool, I will pay you for that job. Obviously, because we're talking about people and incentives, firms want those factors of production at a very low price. Households want to sell their factors of production at a high price. And that's where a wage comes in, the current price agreed to by consumers and producers when you work in the factor market. Now, you might say, well, wages aren't correct. And the answer is who's going to really better determine a wage, the government or the buyer and seller engaging? And a lot of people will say, well, labor is undervalued. Well, the market really does determine that, because if you work for a software engineer for Google, you make a ton of money. So it depends on what sector of the economy, what specialization you are, to whether that wage is, what the value of that wage actually is. Do you think that equilibrium for somebody that works at fast food is $20 an hour? Probably not, and then, of course, that has impacts going forward in terms of the other parts of the economy. And we know that just like anything else, you know, factors of production and goods and services, or excuse me, and wages, they're functions of supply and demand. You have supply goes down or demand goes up, the price of these things go up. Supply goes up or demand goes down, price goes down. Okay. Now we have a different market. That market is known as the product market. Okay. So we have instead, now we have the red section, which is the flow of goods and services, and the green section, which is the flow of money. Households take those wages that they got, they go to the business and buy goods and services that were made with the factors of production. A good example here: Black Oak is in town. I got cash money from getting paid. I go to Black Oak, I give them money, which satisfies their profit motive. They give me good, yummy coffee, which satisfies my utility function. Boom. Second market, the product market is taken care of. The money is flowing. The products and factors of production are flowing. Okay. So, same thing. Firms supply goods and services at a high price. Households demand at a lower price. The market price is current price agreed to by producers and consumers. By the way, notice no government intervention in any of these at all, which of course has costs and benefits. And like anything else, this works the same way: supply and demand. You're going to have different levels of scarcity. So, what does this look like in terms of a laissez faire economy? Well, households go get a job. When they get that job, they get money in return. They take that money, they take it back to businesses. Those businesses have taken the factors of production, turned it into goods and services, and the money circulates and circulates and circulates and circulates and circulates. Does this create wealth, growth? Does it help profit motive and utility? And the answer is yes, in general. Freer economies do better, are wealthier, are more prosperous than non free economies at the margin. And we're going to be looking at that margin coming up. You want the money to continue to flow here. There are problems when the money leaves or when people stop spending. So that means that, if you stop spending money at businesses, they're not going to have wages to pay their people. If you don't buy goods and services, they're not going to have that money to pay your wages, and so on and so forth. And when money leaves here, if you're taking a look at this market and somebody takes their money and goes overseas, with it, and it turns into the cash is spent somewhere else. That becomes a problem. There's all kinds of issues here, and we're not even talking about the common things that purely free markets can create, like monopolies or or massive amounts of inequality if they are left unchecked. Okay, so this is a free market economy. It is shown through circular flow. We have buyers and sellers, households, and businesses doing both things. In the factor market, we have factors of production, primarily in exchange for wages. In the product market, we have money exchanged for goods and services.